Namaskar, India. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our wonderful friends who are watching us from all across the world, and specifically to everybody out there, a big hello. People who've joined us here from Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Sangeeta Singh, and it gives me extreme honor and pleasure to welcome you all to this yet another enriching web series, rather the 12th web series for all of us on Web Talks. Well, as you've seen during the entire lockdown, and now that we can actually see the telltale signs of recovery and positivity, we have always, in our endeavor, ladies and gentlemen, Asia One Magazine and URS International Media House, we have kept trying that we bring across some amazing thought leaders, some eminent personalities who have, simply during this entire lockdown addressed most pertinent topics dealing with business, personalities, mindsets, and of course, economies. And yet again, we have something very interesting lined up for you. Very aptly, our Web Talk Series 12 brings you an amazing topic, which I guess has been playing on all our minds for a very long time. Yes, this time we shall be talking and discussing a little more at length on a resilient Asia, researching with full force. And that's exactly what is there on all our minds here in Asia. So with that, I'd like to say a big thank you to all our panelists who've joined us here today. And of course, we'll be getting to hear their great thoughts and their great minds. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, it's always an honor to share with you that we did make a mention that we've launched our TV series on CNBC TV 18. And last Saturday, we did, actually go out and telecast our first episode. And as all of us know, that it's all about featuring some great success stories of brands and leaders. As we call it, the greatest brands and leaders series 2019 and 2020. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're enjoying that too. But before I get started with this amazing series, I shall be showing you a wonderful promo that talks a little more on our, television series, Greatest Brands and Leaders 2019-20. Let's have the promo, please. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, that gives us a fair idea on our television series on CNBC TV 18. We'll surely try to play this promo once again. And as you know, this is where the boon and the curse of digital era is. At times you really don't know what goes wrong technically, but nonetheless, we'll surely bring it once again for all of you. Well, dear friends, as I get started on our web series 12, I must say, like all the adversities, even COVID-19 has actually come in with opportunities a few steps behind it. I mean, in the last few months, we've actually have witnessed unorthodox thinking leading to pumping, money by the government. Actually all the time we always felt that, these governments were only collecting taxes and, they were always in that receiving mode. But now we see that, yes, they are in that giving mode for all of us. Yes, with individuals actually locked down, totally out of the earning mode, but still unified in fight against this pandemic that has actually hit us all. The single most powerful universal impact of this pandemic is actually blurring, the lines that separated leading nations and continents from Asia, where, of course, the largest populated continent with only two major economies in top 5 global rankings. Yes, today, ladies and gentlemen, this session is enriched by very eminent speakers who will actually enlighten us all with their vision on the opportunities and sprinting ahead from the very new starting point to which actually Europe and countries like America have actually been rolled back. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists that have joined us here. We have His Excellency Dr. Kringshek Charanwongsak, Honorary Consul General of the Republic of Zimbabwe to the Kingdom of Thailand. We're also joined by Mr. Rajat Shukla, Global Head and Principal Partner, Asia One Magazine. We have the very, very lovely and beautiful Ms. Preeti Jhangiani, actress, Indian film industry. We're also joined by Dr. Hema Divakar, Chairperson and CEO Artist. And ladies and gentlemen, let's also welcome Mr. Shalabh Gupta, Founder and CEO, Akiva Superfoods. And we soon will be joined in the panel by Ms. Marek Shifri. Ladies and gentlemen, she's an entrepreneur and former minister, Youth Government, Morocco. So with that, as we all get started, a big hello to all my wonderful panelists, all my speakers who joined us. Let me say a big hello to Dr. Kringshek sir. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, sir, that you joined us once again here.
Happy to join you once again.
And with that, Mr. Rajat Shukla sir, how are you doing?
Doing good, Sangeeta. Good evening, everybody.
And sir, now we are in the web series, our 12th series rather, for Web Talks. Your message to everybody out there. And of course, to all the leaders who've joined us in the past, and our panelists here, and all the attendees, all our viewers, and the Asia One Magazine digital family that we've created.
Sangeeta, first of all, thanks to you. You've been doing a wonderful job. I remember, I think me and Hema ji were on the first web series, in the month of April. And I think through these so many weeks, we've had maybe over 80, 90 leaders joining in from all different parts of the world. So excellent job by you. And also must mention that, the entire vision of the web series was to Web Talks, webinars, was to actually bring out different topics and bring out different diverse leaders to come in and share their vision. And I must tell you that a lot of conclusive thoughts have come out from these Web Talks. If you see, we were all talking that the pandemic will not get over that soon. As soon as April and end of March, we were talking all of that, and somehow though it's unfortunate, it's not happened till now. And we have been talking about economy, business, industry, health, and films as well, and diversity that comes in. So it's been excellent. I think the vision, and I've been following all of them, all the series, and I think very enriching discussion and ideas have come out. So I hope it benefits all our readers and viewers for the Asia One family and the magazine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that very humble beginning. And with that, Ms. Preeti Jhangiani, thank you, ma'am, for joining us here. It's wonderful to have you here with us. How do you feel to be here with us on this particular panel?
It feels very nice, Sangeeta. Thanks. Good evening, and thank you for inviting me on the webinar today. And I hope today as well, just like Rajat said, we come across with some new ideas and something exciting and interesting for everyone.
Thank you. And my all-time favorite, Dr. Hema Divakar. Every time we have you on the panel, it actually brightens up with that smile of yours. Ma'am, how do you feel to be joining us back on our Web Talk series?
Sangeeta, everybody on this panel is feeling resilient and good, up to the mark, and that's why we are here to give some more of our positivity right across, bouncing back with whatever, figuring our way around all the complexities this new pandemic has brought, thinking out of the box, and I think that has led to a lot more recognition of our own potential to be creative.
Wow. And as you very rightly said, ma'am, everybody is feeling very resilient. And I think, all the presence of all our leaders here, our attendees here, it somewhere actually does reflect the resurgent minds, that have crossed the standstill, totally that phase unscathed. And I think that really, really says it all. And with that, yes, we'd love to welcome Mr. Shalabh Gupta, sir. From the time I said a big hello to you, you continue to smile, and I love that smile. It is infectious. How do you feel to be joining us here with us?
Thank you so much. I think everyone else is smiling, so that's infectious. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I think, looking forward to an enriching discussion and coming up with some creative ideas that help us ride through this this crisis. This crisis is an opportunity, like other people said already, and I think it's giving us all a moment to reflect and think more creatively.
Think more creatively. And yes, that's exactly what has been our objective here with our Web Talk series, bringing creative minds, bringing some great thought leaders so that we can make sense out of everything that is happening around us. And with that, now I'd like to welcome and get started on this wonderful topic. It's all about the resurgence of Asia. And I would invite Dr. Finchek, sir, could we please have your camera on? And, I'd like to put my first question to you.
Certainly.
So His Excellency, well, my question to you is, that what are your views on the notion of resurging of the Asian continent to its previous glory? And do you think Asia will actually be able to bounce back in full force, that is full throttle?
I would say that in due time, we will bounce back with full force, but not immediately.
Mm-hmm.
It will, and across the whole Asia, we will bounce back at different speed and with at different level. There's many reasons behind what I'm saying this. I'm hoping that if we coordinate our policy worldwide properly,
Mm-hmm.
we may be able to bounce back easier because it's an interdependent world. We are linking up the entire world in a globalized economy prior to the COVID problem. We have been dependent on one another as the world is conducting its trade and investment. Therefore, if we are going to bounce back, there's many things we need to look at. At the two areas I'm going to deal with. One is the speed of bouncing back, and the other one is the level. So let me go with the speed first. There are a few major factors in my mind. As an economist, I obviously would not immediately think of the management of health as a prime thing, but this time I do, because the capability of managing the epidemic and the pandemic that's spreading through COVID will determine the bouncing back. And each country in Asia have that capability at different level. As a group, you can see that East Asia and Southeast Asia have that capability of dealing with COVID in a much more speedy way than in the South Asian region and the Middle East region. You can see that clearly. But on the whole, if you look at the capability of the government of dealing with it, they also, prior to COVID, has a health system in each country been set up properly. And when COVID pandemic affect us, it revealed the crack in the system very quickly. And any country that have a proper system in place, maybe they have experience in dealing with some of the pandemic before, SARS, MERS, and other kind of thing, they may be able to have the resiliency of dealing with it faster than others. So this is the factor number one of the speed of bouncing back. And also now economic factor of the speed of bouncing back, my opinion would be is a level of dependency on overseas market and overseas economic situation. Countries that have depending heavily on exporting their products, like my own country, Thailand, though my position in the foreign affairs has to do with Zimbabwe, but I'm a Thai citizen. I'm a professor of economics. And therefore, in my opinion, looking at it economically, Thailand, as an example, is an open economy. The size of our international sector, which is export and import, is very big. Therefore, when the country locked down, the airport shut down, the airplane doesn't move people and cargoes. Therefore, it's affected heavily the economic resiliency, because you will only bounce back if you're able to export further and import some of your parts so that you reproduce your part of your supply chain and send it out all over the world. Therefore, this is one of the key. If you are a shut down economy where you seal yourself away from the international economy, prior to this, a lot more than open economy, you'll be affected least, because you're self-dependent anyway, or you're regionally dependent on the countries nearby you. But countries like Thailand, as obviously the degree of trade openness is very big. That's one. Point one is to do with export, international sector. Point two has to do with tourism. Thailand is a huge destination of tourists. We have 40 million people come to Thailand every year. And in fact, people love Thailand. By all counts, by all measurements, people always name Thailand as their first priority of wanting to come and take a vacation. So this is why Thailand is affected badly, because tourists has become zero in the last quarter. Therefore, it will heavily affect Thailand. Obviously, no one will invest at this time because everyone is trying to cope with their own domestic affairs. So with this factor in mind, it is clear that whoever able to deal with it better will bounce back quicker. Also, another item which is very important economically has to do with the government expenditure that they pump in to stimulate the economy. Here, the Keynesian economic stimulants that is being done by all over the world in every single government around the whole world are done in different measures. Countries that pump in a lot more will be able to push the economy, shore it up better than those who don't push the stimulant in. And here you can see that the developed countries, the US, the European, a lot of countries, they pump in a lot of money to the percentage-wise of their GDP, really huge. And therefore, they are hoping to pump it more. But in countries in Asia, we have different levels of capability to do so. And therefore, you will see the difference in a country like Japan, China, and the countries in other parts like South Asia. Sometimes they don't have as much resources to pump into the economy. So these are some of the very important factors that we really need to look at. And for example, the US also not only use the Keynesian fiscal stimulant, they also use the monetary stimulant. For example, their quantitative easing, which is a huge amount, unusual practice, but it has been going on for many years now until become usual now. And their monetary stimulant by pumping in money supply in a huge amount. And it's being done by a few countries. Japan doing some of the Europeans are doing, the US are doing predominantly. Therefore, you will see that by monetary policy and fiscal policy stimulant, it could awaken the economy faster than others. But in Asia, the capability of doing so may not be as big. The Chinese economy have turned inward. Basically, they have 1.4 billion people in their economy. Therefore, if they domestically self-consume, they could show up the economy not too bad. India can do that because you have 1.2 billion people. But a smaller economy like Singapore, Vietnam, Philippines, all this economy will severely be affected by the incapability for self-stimulant inside their domestic arena. I think this is the name of the game that we're seeing here in this time of COVID, when there is pandemic is really affecting the speed. So I named to you one of the main issues is the speed, but the other issue is the level. The level of coming back. You would say, do we come back in full force? That means come back to the same level? Or do we come back to some of the level? I think this has to do with a lot of many factors in the future. One, would this pandemic, COVID, come the second round, third round, fourth round or not? Or can we COVID it? Do we have the vaccine quick enough to be able to stop it right there and do not have the recurrence of many rounds of COVID? If it does come back a few more rounds before the vaccine being discovered, then it will affect the ability to come back to the same level. China is seeing it in Beijing today. You can see that it was in Wuhan and many countries, many areas, and then it was squashed down, and now it's resurgence in certain areas like Beijing. So China is in trouble. Whether they can contain, they may, because they have such a powerful state capability of control, and they can dictate to their people much easier than India. So you can see that maybe China can COVID it easier than India. In India, you have more democratic feelings and the people will do their own things. The government can't tell them fully everything the government wants to do. So that would be an issue. Vaccine, when would we get it? Issue of the recurrence of the issue, and the question of deglobalization that is happening right now. I believe that the world has gone through a new period now. We were in the heyday of globalization. Today is not the same. We are retracting away from some globalization. We still have a huge measure of globalization, but it's declining in that level of globalization. That would mean the world economy will not be resurging as fast as before, and therefore every economy being part of it will not resurge, come back as fast as before, and at the same level. I don't believe it will come back to the same level quickly. It will take a longer time, this time because of deglobalization. Worse still, let me give you another very important, and I don't know how much time should I have, but let me give you one final key message that is important: decoupling. The issue of decoupling is happening this time like we never seen before. The two superpowers that is clearly in the world today is the US and China. The first and the second largest economy are not getting together. Due to this situation as well, the whole world are being forced, whether we like it or not, we are forced to choose side. Choose side doesn't mean we have absolutely no dealing with the other side. It means you predominantly dealing and have some engagement with one side, then you have much less engagement with the other side. Because the world is decoupling as it is today, this is a severe problem to the entire world. I don't think this will be healthy for the world economy. The world will not grow as fast for the next few years unless we come back together, get together our act, talk together, be more friendly, be willing to give and take, understand that we will grow together in a peaceful manner if we trade, we invest, we work together. But now I don't feel that the superpower are feeling so. I see that Donald Trump, for example, the president of the US, if he is elected one more time, he would do the same thing. But if Joe Biden become president, he will more or less have to do like Trump, but less. He will not bounce back fully to the pre-COVID time because the situation has gone so bad. It's impossible for America to turn around quickly, despite Biden become president in November. My feeling is that now Xi Jinping is coping with it. In the beginning, try to cruise along and hoping that Trump would not create too much havoc. But after Trump hitting him so hard all the time, Xi Jinping is revenging back. In a way, he's already announced many measures of not depending on the outside world as much. And here, therefore, you can see the world moving that way. So my answer, in short, it will bounce back fully eventually, but a longer period than we think. I think this issue is going to be with us for some time, but Asia is a good candidate to bounce back more than many other continents, in my opinion.
Thank you, His Excellency. Wow. So yes, Asia as a continent is a good candidate to bounce back. But right now, when everybody's talking about decoupling, we're talking about deglobalization, of course, there is a problem that stands still. With that, let me bring on Mr. Shukal here into the conversation. Sir, we just heard, His Excellency making a mention of a couple of points. We're talking about the supply chain getting hampered. We talk about tourism getting hampered. We're talking about government stimuli. All we need to be really, we need to be at that speed right now. So what do you think could be, if you could add on to some more recovery steps, for this entire economic bounce back, particularly to India and of course Asia as a whole?
Thank you, Sangeeta. Dr. Kringsack, it's always a pleasure listening to you. Thank you so much. It's enriching always. And Sangeeta, to add, more things. So I've always been a firm believer that, the solutions are always there in the past. So if you go back and see where such similar situations have come in and how economies have come back, so there is a lot to learn. And I would like to go back to the 1920s when the Great Depression happened, where it was similar. It was a world economy problem. There was not much demand, and the private investment had gone down. And one major thing also happened that time where it was the markets had gone down, the stock markets had gone down. And if you still see, the only difference is today, countries like India, the stock market has still not fallen as much, and I think that's a good sign. And like Dr. Krinzak also said, for some of the larger economies like India and China, still there is a strong foundation. And also because you have these so many different diverse businesses around, which have definitely the income or the profits have come down, but similarly then the expenses have also gone down. So certain economies are still yes, I would like to use the phrase coming out of this in a small way. Having said this, long way to go. No one knows when the vaccine is going to be out, when things are going to be normal, back to how they were. And definitely that's what Prime Minister Modi also says, that we need to become self-reliant. And especially some of the larger economies, we can, because as mentioned, we have some of the largest population. And if you see Asia, again, Asia is one of the largest continents, and Asia is the largest, most populous as well. So definitely Asia is going to come back. I feel it's already happening. It's already happening in a way that the sentiment is now changing. The new normal is acceptable to all of us. We are used to working from home. We are used to having our workforces to work from home. So a lot is happening. Definitely numbers are down, but I think we've really adjusted. I think thanks to technology, a lot is happening. I wouldn't say business is back. Definitely the services sector, again, coming onto a particular phase, the services sector is most badly hit, which is also one of the largest employers all over Asia and the world. So once you see the travel, tourism and the airline industry coming back, and hospitality, I'm sure things would get better. So I think it's a matter of time where these particular sectors also slowly will start opening, and let's hope for the best.
And as you rightly said, yes, the sentiments are very positive, and each one of us very swiftly have actually adapted to the new normal ways, and which is why we didn't see the economy completely at standstill, because in each our own way we have made it a point that yes, we are going to be resilient, we are going to be the unstoppable ones. So thank you so much. And with that, let me bring on Preeti into the conversation. So Preeti, yes, once again a warm welcome. Now, alongside the hospitality industry and other industries, also very hard hit is the film industry, as all of us have been seeing. So do you think it's now really going to be able to bounce back in the same way, and will be able to come out of this this whole vicious circle that it has got into, and will be able to attain its previous charm?
You're completely right, Sangeeta. It's actually hit the film industry very bad, quite hard, especially for all the technicians and all the daily wage workers who were they are the ones who are the worst hit. Not only that, of course, we all know the theaters and everything else is shut down, which I don't see the audience running to a theater anytime soon. So yes, it's been a bad time, but films are slowly planning to start. So let's see how many films can actually start shooting with all the rules in place, all the new rules that we have to set up. So we'll have to see how many can actually start shooting properly. Also the locations and everything has changed. So many films that were planned were now completely stalled or stopped. So it will I think the other industries might be able to start up much faster than the Bollywood film industry. But I think once everything settles down, and I'm hoping it would be, the longest I would say would be end of this year. I think once things settle down, I think everything will be back to normal. So I'm hoping everything gets back to normal pretty soon.
I think what we really have is a positive attitude, and that is what is going to keep us going. And as you rightly said, end of December, but yes, we're all waiting to bounce back, and that spirit is still very much there. And thank you so much, Preeti, for adding your thoughts to it. And let me bring on Dr. Hema Divakar. Well, ma'am, of course, all about preventive healthcare is what I would like to know from you. I mean, preventive healthcare is actually going to be the defining factor of the how is that, we're making facilities available to women and kids, and how do you personally see Asia, in this particular field, and how do you see the future there?
Thank you, Sangeeta. Before I begin responding to the preventive healthcare aspect of it, I want to place on records thank you to Rajatji, Sangeeta, Sandeep, and Alish as well, because when you say Asia One Family, good times and not so good times, we have all been connecting with each other, saying we have each other to work together and resilient.
You're watching each other's back. I think that's more important.
Yeah, thank you so very much for that. So now coming to the preventive healthcare. Really speaking, in the last decade or so, thought about preventing illness and promoting wellness. This is very much on the cards. Even with the government initiative of establishing Ayushman Bharat centers, which are called the health and wellness centers. Well, as oftentimes it happens, any vision or an innovative idea needs people to implement it. And the gap between innovation and implementation was not fulfilled. 150,000 health and wellness centers were planned. Just hardly a couple of hundreds of them are in existence. For this, there are many reasons. We need actually to break the silos, and that's what I appreciate about Asia One, getting all the other stakeholders together. Suppose we as artists are implementing partners for the health and wellness center because we want to make this happen. COVID has taught us why this preventive healthcare is important, and I'll tell you that in a minute. Suppose Preeti ji is our ambassador and Shalabh gives the super food, which is nutritious. There are different stakeholders with the government. We just engage with each other to make things happen. In the past, access, affordability, awareness, everything was a problem. You need preventive care, but where do you go to? So if the health and wellness centers actually become a reality and we work together, what lesson the COVID has taught us? Jaan hai to jahan hai. Yes, so that is something to be underlined. And what is the key problem in India that we are facing? Age is a risk factor. It's a given everywhere else in the world. But every serious case that is happening is largely because a person of any age is having blood pressure, blood sugar, heart disease, etc., etc. With that as the baseline factor, increase the risk. All these people 10 years ago, they would have gone and taken some preventive care. But these things with a change in lifestyle, etc., these are opportunities for prevention and putting the next generation in the pink of health. So those who have a change in lifestyle, eating right, exercising right, trying to get off these what we call comorbidities or these disease processes are ahead in their life, care should actually begin when the baby is in the womb. That's why we become major players as women's healthcare, because before pregnancy and during pregnancy, if we take the best of the care, the Poshan program, which is about nutrition, the Anemia Mukt Bharat, which is all about building the hemoglobin, etc. So all of these, if we together support the programming of the baby in the womb, would lead itself to a positive, good health and well-being in the future. That is where we have to invest our energies the most. But for others, yes, those who are in the younger age group should move towards preventive care of all these dreaded diseases, as I said. Those who are already diagnosed should again move towards prevention of worsening those diseases. Those who are already in the worst state should at least prevent and maintain a good quality of life. So there is a scope widely available to us. It is our rephrasing, rethinking, researching with resilience to make this happen. So we would invite anybody who would be interested in joining hands to implement this. We will build the capacity of the healthcare providers who will ensure preventive healthcare anybody who seeks care.
Thank you, Ma'am. And how rightly said, yes, collaboration is the way forward. We could actually use each other, rather use would be the wrong word, but collaborate with each other to their benefits and yes, take it all forward. Thank you so much. You always add so much of positivity. And with that, let me bring on Mr. Shalabh Gupta into the conversation. So I hope you're enjoying the conversation. Before, all of us have to have had emerged as superheroes. All that we saw back into our sci-fi movies, and today each one of us in our own stride have played a superhero, and here we are with you, Akiva, the superfood. So a little more about that before I put my question to you, because I think yes, superfoods are something which are the need of hour.
No, sure. And I think, I'm coming in the right order as well, because Dr. Hema just spoke about preventive healthcare, and that's what we're all about. We're about two things. This is a brand that I started in 2016, and with two ideas in mind. One was that, it should be easy to be healthy. It shouldn't mean eating broccoli and boiled chicken and going to the gym for 2 hours and counting calories. It should be easy. It should be a part of our lifestyles. It should not be a special effort. And second, that we have a wealth of traditional wisdom. Right? India is an ancient civilization. In fact, most Asian countries have had are pretty ancient civilizations and have had continuous inhabitation. So there is there's thousands of years of tradition in most of these countries, including in ours, which is coming back, but it's through efforts of brands like Akiva Superfoods, we're trying to accelerate their coming back and us getting more out of those traditions. So we try to bring Ayurveda and other traditional recipes in a modern form through our very trendy, innovative products.
Thank you. And yes, as you said that, today, even when you talk about Ayush, we see that it's a part of our medical health insurance, which earlier was not really recognized. And I think people are giving that due, which was really, really needed out there. So now coming to the question, Asia as a region is actually a powerhouse when it comes to agriculture produce. And you said, when you talk about eating healthy, it's not about having that broccoli or, having your keto diet or all of that, but rather, it's a more conscious effort in what is available to you regionally. So I'd like to ask you, when the entire world is now turning to organic and vegan options, how much scope do you actually see for your business like yours tapping into the global market and contributing in turn to Asia's growth?
So huge scope. I think we'd gotten started on this path even before the crisis hit, and I think the crisis has only catalyzed and accelerated some of these trends. Overall, look, I think there's 2-3 things happening in parallel. One is there is a rebalancing of the world, like His Excellency said and other people said. There is a rebalancing of the world. It's a more multipolar, it's a bipolar world today, with the US and China and other folks being smaller. And I think perhaps the lasting effects of this crisis, to borrow from the first talk, will be that we will enter a multipolar world where more and more countries will be more self-sufficient and will have more to contribute. So as a result of this, and as a result of especially Asian countries like India becoming stronger economically, they're also becoming stronger culturally. They're also becoming more confident of their own heritage, right? And which is why I think when we were kids, we used to run to everything imported. Imported was the most sought after label in our markets and in our consumption.
I remember running to the custom notified stores at that point in time.
Right. And we used to wait for our uncles or aunts to come from abroad to carry Levi's jeans and so on back. And that's not the case anymore at all. We're a confident country, partly because of our economic growth. It's a long way to go, but it's covered such a distance already. And partly because, we've also rediscovered our own heritage, and we've been given the license to do that. So I think one is there's this confidence in our own heritage and a willingness to explore it. And that's where things like yoga, Ayurveda, etc. come in. And I believe Ayurveda is where yoga was 10 years ago. The second is that there is also a much more global mindset in the Western economies. So they are also very keen to explore the great that is coming out of other civilizations and other continents, not merely as exotic sideshows, but actually as potentially mainstream things, right? So already traditional Chinese medicine, what they call TCM in China, is very, very big in China, and it's making inroads elsewhere. Japan has a long tradition of very nutritional food and so on, and Japanese food, and not limited to just sushi and sashimi, but the rest of it also has become popular in the West. I think Ayurveda, speaking for India, is following the same trend. And speaking for ourselves, as a small example, we are seeing our sales in the US literally double every month or a couple of months. And to our surprise, it's not just the Indian diaspora. It's people with very American sounding names who are buying our Ayurveda inspired health shots. And actually, I went to the US a couple of years ago to explore the market for myself, see it with my own eyes. And I was amazed, the US specialty stores now carry ghee. Turmeric is huge, of course. Ashwagandha is huge. So a lot of these like heavy duty names that even we run away from are making inroads. So it's a very exciting time. I think there's lots to contribute to Asia.
And as as you spoke about things that are very much available right into our kitchen, I mean, turmeric always has been an immunity booster. And I think every medical advice that's been coming to us in the last 3 months has been, make sure you're having that haldi doodh and a lot of other things, So yes, really kind of going back and switching back to all those Ayurveda or jo nani ke nukse hua karte the, like people would say. Yes, exactly. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And with that, His Excellency, I'm back again with you. I would like to, want you to kind of give a message to the entire business community, because every time that you speak, you always add a holistic view from the international perspective of business. So, since we all look up to you, we really want to hear something more from you to the entire business community.
You're so kind. Maybe because I've been to India 60 times in my life, and I love Indian food now. So I have been changed by traveling everywhere. I live in US. I teach at Harvard University, so I understand the West. I went to India. I went to China 60 times each. So, and I live in Southeast Asia today. So basically, if you want me to give an overall global perspective of someone who have traveled the world, I would say this: whenever we have a crisis, it's a great opportunity. People get so tied up with the crisis until they forgot to look for opportunity in the dark day. Now I've seen a lot of new business emerging in the midst of my own country. I used to be advisor to the Prime Minister, and I told many of our Prime Ministers that, we always hit with crisis all the time, either financial crisis, economic crisis, political crisis, subprime crisis from the US. Then we have all kinds of crises again and again. But this time is a severe blow. But, I have noticed some businesses are growing very big during this period, the last 4-5 months. In Thailand, some business that have never grown have grown. Therefore, the opportunity is there. For example, in the health products, may I name something else? The pandemic product. It's a new name. I want to give it to you. If you create product and services for pandemic situation, you grow. I just had dinner last night with a millionaire, my friend in Thailand, and he said that his business of food grow during this period. That's exactly what I'm trying to say, that is the ability to look into the opportunity of the business community. If you are stuck up with your old style, what you have been doing, and you think the whole world surrounding around what you have been doing for the last many years, and you don't look for other opportunity, you may be stuck. But if you look for opportunity, evolve along with the change. That's my first word. Opportunity is there. My second word that I would like to give, if you don't mind, for our business community would be collaboration. You say, why you want to collaborate in a time when everybody need to survive and compete? I would say, you can compete while collaborate. And that's the secret of success during this crisis time. If you collaborate together, let me give an example. In Asia, it's an Asian century. No one doubt this is an Asian century. And we are so near one another. If we just imagine the whole world is being pushed to decoupling, and the Asians get together and say, hey, let's get together. We're near our proximity. Let's collaborate. Let's talk. Let's not duplicate one another. Let's do things that we are good at. And let's collaborate, coordinate among ourselves. Don't you think the Asian economy will shoot up quicker if we just think collaboration? And the business world is the same. You know, I have so many friends who are business people here who want to do business with China, India, Southeast Asia, the Middle East. If we just collaborate, but the problem is that we don't collaborate. We just collaborate with the big economy in the West. Usually, isn't it? In the past, we just collaborating with the European economies, with the American economies, and lately the Chinese economy. And then we neglect all the little economies everywhere, which when you bind together as a group, it's a big one. The ASEAN economy, 10 countries, is half the size of China, India, and is a fast-growing economy. Therefore, if we collaborate between, say, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, look at what powerful powerhouse it can be. So my second word would be look for collaboration. Don't look for just competition. And my last word that I would like to mention in this passing time would be there must be some level of uniqueness in our economy that would provide something that would draw the attention of the world. After all, just now, Mr. Gupta said so well, we have ancient wisdom here in Asia. We are very old centuries. We have thousands of years of histories. Why don't we look into some of the uniqueness of Asia in each particular economy and create that to put it as part of what we can offer to the world? And then therefore, even in time of crisis, we still can offer something unique. If we look into ourselves, and instead of copying the West fully in everything, just make sure we too show our uniqueness in our time. If your business is unique, no one can push you out. You will be there because you'll be the only one providing such unique product and services, and therefore they will always be in demand.
Totally. And we rather, I must say, sir, that we actually had an entire series on collaboration and competition, and how rightly have you mentioned that any kind of collaboration does need a lot of innovation. So that's very important. And why look far west? It's always about we Asia as an entire country, and all the countries in Asia can be that one country and kind of collaborate with each other and kind of put that, what we're talking about, bounce back Asia. So thank you. Always leave us on a positive note. And
if you need anything in Thailand, I know the whole Thailand. So let me know if Thailand can help you in any link with you, all of you, anywhere around the world.
How kind of you, sir. How kind of you. Yes, of course. So here we are. I mean, Hema ma'am, you just spoke about collaboration, and we have Dr. Grinchuk here. He's saying anything in Thailand, and I'm like the man there. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
With that now, I can see all smiles from Rajat sir. He's always so happy, So Rajat sir, yes, we have been talking about great collaboration, but coming back to India, we need to understand from you, of course, with the media industry that we are into, what from your perspective, what are the steps that the Indian government and our Prime Minister Modi, they've already taken, or they are in plans to give that support and boost to the industry for better, to get onto the path of economic recovery?
Okay. Thank you, Sangeeta. So, when I said this earlier that during the 1929 Great Depression, the largest investment, and I think that time, it was President Franklin, who was heading America that time, and he started something which was called as a phenomena which was called the New Deal, and it talked about recovery, it talked about investments, and in fact, it made sure that the government, and in all countries, the government, I like to call them as the largest organization. The largest organization in every country is the government. And even right now, what you see in India, the organization or the government has promised a lot of investments, and it's going ahead as well. And during times of the pandemic, there is a sense of reset everywhere. And I'll come to that, how it came in the media industry also a little later. But having said this, so now you see Prime Minister Modi focusing on renewable energy. In fact, Adani has just backed the biggest project. You see the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Program, which has been reinitiated, so that this labor, which is the immigrant labor, which has gone back and get employment where they are as well, so that actually they don't run out of money. So a lot of initiatives have been taken. As I mentioned, he's talking about the economy being more self-reliant. That is also happening. So I think the government is taking a lot of initiatives. For us, you just were talking about the CNBC TV 18 series that we started, which is called the Greatest Brands and Leaders Asia GCC. And when 10 years back we thought of getting into the print media business, we had to start our own magazine as Asia One. But now when we thought of starting a TV series, so you don't need to start your own TV channel. So we collaborated with CNBC TV 18. They liked our concept. They saw some of the past leaders we've been featuring and talking about, and we told them clearly that our focus and vision is to talk more about the emerging leaders and entrepreneurs, and not only the biggest ones. And they liked the concept. So collaboration, yes. And I think times have changed. Again, 1929, what was there and what is there today is far different. So I think this resilience, this resurgence is going to be much faster. And I think Asia is going to be back. I think we're already there. I think the only thing affecting us right now, which is on a standstill, is the services economy. And I think once it gets better and people actually are back to work, I think that will be the answer. Thank you.
While all the every business or every particular every particular economy doing their own bit, do you think somewhere media does play a very, very strong role in building a narrative about in its own country or its own leaders? And that has to be handled very carefully.
I was happy to hear a recent news that people were saying that the COVID-19 cases which are actually there are being reported lesser by the media. Yeah. So, I was happy to hear that first time, people think that, otherwise people think the media gives out figures just out of the blue.
Doing everything exponentially.
So all explosive figures are given out. But that's how it is. Honestly, the real reason is, yes, maybe, everyday figures might be a little higher but then the media is reliant on certain statistics that are given out. So those statistics are being talked about, and I think the media is doing a great job. I think, we all are well aware of what's happening. We all are well aware, and, look at economies, we are all trying to help each other as well. So, whether it's a medicine or something required throughout the world, India has been providing it, and certain different countries have been coming forward. So I think that's excellent. That's excellent.
Thank you so much. With that, Preeti, once again, I'll bring you back into the conversation. And look at that smile. And yes, my next question is very specific to that smile and that brimming with energy face of yours, very positive. Of course, in these tough times, in these pressing times, having somebody like you on board who's full of positivity, who's been smiling through this entire series, what is that message that you'd like to give out to all your fans and followers out there?
It's a message. There is no specific. I mean, right now, of course, everybody is spreading a message of positivity, and mental health is a big issue. Right now, because it's not just businesses, it's everybody locked up in one place, not being able to meet your family members, not being able to meet your friends, your relatives. So it's a tough time for everybody. And of course, like everyone knows, job, businesses, everything is in a slump right now. But I think the message, besides anything else, sanity is more important than anything else, and I think that is one thing that I would like to put out there. And it's very easy to say that have a positive frame of mind when you're just locked up in one place, but the only way to go forward is to look forward. And like everybody here is saying, there's so many things that you can do. Use the time positively. I mean, you spoke about health and you spoke about eating well. I think everybody is become a chef nowadays, or everyone is exploring new sides to their personality. And I think it's given us a time to bond, especially for us, me and my family. It's given us a time to bond with my family, with my kids, much more than we could, because otherwise life was just running away from us. And life in Bombay especially, it's just so hectic. I mean, we have our company and we're producing a film, and we had just started the Pro Panja League, which was, I felt like it was completely taking over our entire life. And I feel that we've been able to use this time positively to bond, to work on our health, and to work on our mental state as well, because everything, in fact, so that's the message I want to give out, is to use this time positively, and spread love, spread cheer wherever you can, and to focus on the positive rather than the negative.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you. Yes, spread a lot of love, a lot of positivity, and stay mindfulness is what we would say.
Yeah.
With that, Dr. Hema seems to have agreed with everything that you were saying, Preeti, because I could see her, she was constantly nodding, and I'm sure. So, ma'am, before I put the question, anything that you'd like to add on to that? Like, this also is kind of a preventive measure, right? Bonding with your family, spreading that love, spreading that cheer out.
Absolutely. Say all components which are ingredients for a good life have come together because of COVID. So that's what we have to say. And then moving from passion to purpose with our own organization, Artist, which expands as Asian Research and Training Institute for Skill Transfer. So the tagline of our organization has been connect and collaborate. That's what we have recognized in the Asian regions. That's why it's labeled as such. What Dr. Krinzak sir said, we have learned lots of lessons from Thailand for preventive care for cervical cancer, for example, for the screening and vaccines. We have borrowed the lesson. So we have to believe in ourselves. When we say a lot of hope and aspiration for the generation next, we have to now get down to action. Okay, just not you just talking about it. We have to walk the talk. For that, we have to get our blueprint ready, execute, and we have to learn our lessons, because such diversity in Asian countries, one thing that will work in one geography, few kilometers down the line, it'll have to be something different. So flexible mindset is something we should have, and make the course correction as we move along. And we know that all this will take time. But I must conclude by saying, win must begin.
It must begin, yes. So, ma'am, how hopeful are you on the growth of this Asian region, that it is promising with its development strides? What are your expectations in the next few years?
We are always very optimistic, because there's no use being any other way. We have to be diehard optimists, because we have to believe that, yes, we will move forward, even if it is the pace which Dr. Krinzak said, whether it's fast or slow, as long as the movement is forward, it's good for everybody. Because this was such an unexpected scenario and situation. So everybody has to reset, restart, research, be resilient, etc., etc. All the R's have come together, including Rajat. So they are. So so we cannot say or think any other way, but have the hope that things will improve. Because if you don't start it with that note, that's how you have repeatedly said, smile and positivity. It's not like grin and bear it. We are smiling, but we have the inner strength to believe that we shall overcome. Hum honge kamyab. That is the mindset we should have. And I think we have recognized our own worth and value, the backdrop of this situation. And I think if we get together, break the silos, join hands, we'll be able to showcase to the rest of the world how much and how better we can do.
Get together, break the silos. Thank you. The keywords right there that I like to pick. And with that, let me bring in Shalabh into the conversation. Sir, we just heard Dr. Krinzak talk about, deglobalization. We talked about decoupling. So where do you actually see that immediate challenge in respective to your industry, on a global scale? And how do you really, and when we also talk about collaboration, at least amongst the Asian countries rather than looking far west, so how can you actually see these Asian economies coming together, governments coming together to resolve it all?
Yeah, no, I think there are challenges for sure, but like Dr. Hema said, it's good to be an optimist. The only thing good about being a pessimist is that you're either pleasantly surprised or right. So, but that doesn't really help you very much. So I think there are 3 areas where there are challenges in my industry, and I'm loosely classifying my industry as the startup industry, which deals with physical products, the non-software startup industry. Because we're a small FMCG company, and there are small personal care companies and so on. I think 3 places. One is very tactical. There are a number of companies that are dependent on Chinese supply chains, because China really became the supply chain hub of the world, right? So very simple things. We luckily don't have a China component of the supply chain, but broadly in the industry, a number of people can make shampoo, but they don't have the pump in the dispenser, because all the pumps are made in one place in Shenzhen.
Even pharma, for a matter of fact, has been so much dependent on China.
Yeah, so tons of people dependent. In fact, literally know of a few small companies that were so dependent and just don't have the time to change their supply chain. So they will need to find an exit for themselves. So one is just the supply chain disruption and the change to either domestic supply chain or a different country. Second is fundraising, because as you may have all seen in local media, and especially in the light of some tensions going on with China, but also broadly, I think, given the decoupling, given all these things that are happening, I think the high degree of dependence of Indian startups on US and Chinese investors, that is a risk. And China certainly, because China has been a big part of a lot of unicorn stories of late. And the third is demand, because again, a number of startups are heavily dependent on international demand and not really on domestic. The Indian market is, we're the world's 4th largest economy, but we're also 138 on per capita income. So we're actually a pretty poor country still. And there's a lot of us who are able to make premium products for a small sliver of India and a small sliver of the global economy. Some folks are, so I think once that global demand, once globalization goes down and that global demand goes down as well, or global supply chains get disrupted, that's a third problem. How can Asia collaborate? I think one is sort of a coming together of, I think, the non-China part of Asia, and saying we want to capture the bulk of the supply chain business that will migrate from China and will look for other homes. And it's not a political thing. It's just that a lot of people through the crisis have also discovered that concentration of risk in one country isn't a great thing. So naturally there'll be some friendly competition, but it's also important to just keep it in Asia, if that's possible. Because none of the countries in Asia are one China. So, but all of them together can be more than China. So that's one. The second is, I think, and this is something that His Excellency and the governments, etc., will know a lot better. But easier trade between these countries and more promotion of trade, more cross-pollination. Right now, I think entrepreneurs like me tend to think reflexively about US and UK and Germany and Canada much before we think of our next door neighbors in the Far East and in SAARC countries. And why should that be the case? There's a bit of a language gap, but not really, not anymore. So that shouldn't be the case. We should be looking at Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, etc. before. And the reason why we don't, partly, is because none of those countries individually seem like large enough markets, and the US seems like a very large and inviting and delicious market. So, but if they were able to come together and represent a whole, that would be great. I think those are the 2 areas of collaboration, really. The third may be some kind of licensing and trust issues. For example, again, speaking of my industry, the major the only really globally respected license for organic products is USDA organic. And it's amazing that despite we're in Asia, we represent 2/3 of the world's population, but we are still looking for FDA and USDA approvals to give trust to international customers. So that's something that we can grow on as well.
Thank you. So there's a lot of onus that actually also lies on the government in the Asian economies to collaborate, and could it be licensing, could it be any kind of procurement? Thank you.
They're the largest organization, like Rajat said, so naturally they need to do some of the heavy lifting.
So Shala, very quickly, when we talk about the Akiva superfood, it's like completely made in India?
100% made in India.
100% made in India. Okay, so and see, that's possible, right? So thank you, and with that, yes, a big thank you to all our panelists. And before I conclude, maybe just a couple of tomorrow we are celebrating the International Yoga Day, and it's the 6th International Yoga Day. So maybe all your messages. Let me we started with Preeti. So Preeti, your message for the International Yoga Day.
Well, I used to practice a lot of yoga earlier. Now I've shifted a lot of my workout to functional training, but I'm a true and a firm believer in yoga. I think the most important thing before anything else is flexibility. When you work on any part of your body, I think the first thing you should start working on is your flexibility, and yoga can really help with that. Plus, it's in our roots. India is known for its yoga and yoga teachers. So
yoga se hoga, like Ramdev Baba always says it,
So yes, a very happy International Yoga Day to everyone out there, and start by keeping fit.
Thank you. With that, Dr. Divakar, yes, physical health, we go to the gym, we do all our yogas, we do everything possible, eat right. What happens to mental health? Your message on the International Yoga Day for all the people.
Because by definition, the health means physical and mental. Right. Nowadays, the mental is coming more into focus because they've recognized what can happen. If you're just only physically fit, and you need, for that resilience, you really need your mental health. According to me, yoga is a way of life. It cannot be a day. That's the message I want to give everybody, that they have to shift gears, and if they really want to align their thoughts and actions, both physically and mentally, yoga is the way forward.
And I think who knows better than Asia as an economy when it comes to even Thailand, when you talk about great treatments which are available to us, Vietnam, Indonesia, every country, China for a matter of fact, acupuncture, and so many things out there. With that, let me bring on His Excellency. Sir, what is your message from Thailand to all the people out there on International Yoga Day tomorrow?
I have to thank India for allowing yoga to come into the world. And therefore, when you celebrate International Day for Yoga, let the whole world exercise and be healthy, so that we will be able to look back, and after so many years of your celebration of Yoga Day, it will see increasingly year after year the entire world healthier and healthier.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Shalagupta, of course, superfoods, superheroes, where does yoga play a role for you?
No, I think yoga is, like I said, yoga is very inspiring to us, because we see the rest of what is traditionally available in India following the path of yoga. Yoga has led the way. I would just say that the pranayama part of yoga, which is breathing exercises, etc., I think that's really important in this time, because mental health is so important, and we're not getting out of it anytime soon, it seems. So let's take a moment, let's relax. It's okay, we're locked into our homes.
Breathe, like we say, we need to be conscious of our breath.
Let's breathe, and it's okay, let's take a pause, and let's use yoga to keep ourselves calm. Because, we are also, as people, like Preeti was saying, we're running so fast, we're sprinting through our lives. It's not natural. And now to rebel against what is happening to us, which is we have to be at home and take a pause, it's okay to settle into that reality for a while.
Thank you so much. So yes, we've been sprinting too much. We need to just calm down, take a pause, and of course be more conscious about the way we breathe. And with that, yes, Mr. Rajesh Shukla, sir, your message on International Yoga Day.
I'm just happy that these kind of celebrations give branding to India. And as Shalabh was saying, there are now many non-Asians, looking at, his medicines, and, non-Asians are also keen on what is yoga, and they now know yoga comes from India. So I think this celebration gives more branding to India. So that's also important.
See, there comes
Thank
the
you.
media, a lot of branding right there, and there comes Asia One magazine, absolutely building a brand for India. With that, a big thank you to all our wonderful panelists here. Thank you for enriching this wonderful session. And yes, our take, ladies and gentlemen, everybody, our viewers out there, yes, as an economy, as Asia, we definitely are bound to, research, bounce back totally in full throttle, full power. That's what our panelists believe, and so does Asia One magazine. With that, thank you so much. This is your host signing off. A big thank you to everybody. Thank you so much for joining.
Sangeeta, you've been wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to
Bye-bye.
talk to all of
Bye.
you.